Hey guys, before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the support on the last video. You guys absolutely killed our like goal. So for this video, if we could get 10 likes on this episode of the podcast, that would just absolutely mean the world to us. So thank you guys again for the support and hope you guys enjoy the video.
Hello and welcome back to the DebateGate Sports Podcast. Today is a special day. We shall be posting this hopefully tomorrow on Thursday. We are currently recording this for the second time, and we are, introducing the Great Debate Podcast here on DebateGate Sports. We took in a few of your suggestions. The most of you who did not suggest stuff, I'm very disappointed in you. Not a great situation there, but speaking of thankfulness, I can speak for Gavin on this one. We are extremely thankful for the support we got from our most recent episode, which is going to be like this one, about an hour to an hour and a half long, and it's going to be showing our faces. Even though, it disgusts most people on this planet, we are doing it. So we want to thank you for all the support. We are up to 71 subscribers. One person unsubscribed. I'm assuming you're not watching, but who you are, I will find you. I will kill you. Don't demonetize us, YouTube. Thank you. Well, let's jump right on into it and stop making Gavin cringe and hate me. First one is from my good friend, Andrew Clark. Gavin, I don't think you really know him, but he's a very cool dude. He goes to IC. He's cool. Follow him. I don't know where or what at. He can put it in the comments if you would like. But thank you for getting us this suggestion. It is DK Metcalf versus Terry McLaurin, and I added AJ Brown because I'm selfish, and I really like him a lot, so I added him. And this is basically for the best wide receiver of the 2019 class, or second-year wide receiver. Gavin, what do you think?
So ranking these guys 1 through 3, I would say have to go DK. Gonna have to jump on the bandwagon with all these NFL Instagram accounts. And I would go number 2, AJ Brown, number 3, Terry. But I can see an argument really being made for any of these guys. Like, these guys are all young. These guys all have great potential, and they're already like stars right now. But I am gonna have to go DK number 1. He's put up better numbers than Megatron through like the same amount of games or something. Which, I mean, people saying that he already is like Megatron's level, just stop talking. Like, no, he's not. I don't care what that like Jim Schwartz said that he wasn't on Megatron's level yet, and DK was like, that made me mad. I took it personally, all Michael Jordan-esque. Shut up. Please just shut up. Not gonna lie though, he is very good. Leading the league in yards and average per catch because he doesn't have that many receptions. And number 2, I would have AJ Brown. This is a controversial one because he doesn't really have the greatest stats. But what I kind of looked at it as is that he Corey Davis is like a very, very good number 2 wide receiver, and AJ Brown's been hurt for the majority of the year as well. So the combination of having to like compete for targets, not necessarily compete, but like it's not like he's DeAndre Hopkins, so he's getting thrown to every time Kyler Murray steps back. And number 3 is Terry McLaurin. But honestly, I think Terry could have the potential to be like a top 5, top 3 running back, wide receiver in the near future, just because right now the situation that he's in, he's had different quarterbacks and a bad offensive line. And so we really haven't gotten to see like him like a really good quarterback and like a good system, but he's still putting up terrific numbers. As of right now, I would say Terry's 3, but I can see an argument for him being 1 out of all 3 of these guys. So Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, it's very close. I will be honest with you. It is extremely, extremely close. So DK, he is 5th in the league with touchdowns. Terry is on the second page of Sports Info Solutions, so it doesn't matter. He has 3, by the way. And then AJ Brown is 6 with 8. And then obviously DK is 1st with over 1,100 yards. And then Terry is 8th. And then AJ Brown is 26th. So they all are very similar. It's pretty close. But I'm going to put DK number 1. Despite the fact that he also has by far the best quarterback out of all of them. I'm still going to put him number 1 because he's I don't want to. He's different, but like, don't go gloating that, DK. I know you're watching this. I know this is going to go right to your head, having some random 16-year-old say that you're different. Is that Terry is like Devontae Adams, where he's very good. His route running is the best part of his game, but he could kind of do everything, but there's nothing really special about him. And then AJ Brown, he's probably one of the best at breaking tackles in the NFL from any wide receivers. You saw that in the Baltimore game where he broke nearly every tackle to carry them to the win, when he broke like 7 tackles on the game-winning touchdown or game-tying touchdown to send it to overtime, and then like 5 more tackles on the play before to get the first down. So, you know, AJ has a top 10 quarterback, but DK has the 3rd best. Way to choke the MVP there, Russell Wilson. Good job. But Terry at the same time has bottom 5. But then the thing that goes for Terry is that he's really the only decent option on that team. Like, he's not getting thrown to like he's DeAndre Hopkins, but, you know, he's getting quite a lot more catches. Not quite a lot, but a lot more catches than both DK and AJ. AJ has only 44 catches, and DK has 63, and Terry has 71. So a lot more catches there, a lot more opportunities. But, you know, as Gavin said, thanks for stealing my line. That was mine, loser. You know, it was, who was the coach you said who said this?
Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator for the Eagles, that Monday night game.
Okay. I knew that someone said it to him and he was like, that made me really mad. Man, shut up. Shut up. Like, you were compared to Calvin Johnson because you were within an inch. You were within 30 pounds. You were within 0.1 seconds on a 40 time, which is the same difference between you and a 4.49 linebacker. It's the same difference between you and Calvin Johnson. Shut up. Stop. No one cares, right? No one cares. No one in their right mind besides a 4-year-old thinks that you're as good as Calvin Johnson, and neither should you. I know you're supposed to be confident, right? I get that. Every player in the NFL, they're in the NFL because they believed that they were the best and were able to work for it. That's why I'm not going to be in the NFL.
I think it's actually bad for him, which is why I think that like a guy like Terry McLaurin or AJ Brown has the better future compared to DK Metcalf, because you see a second-year wide receiver with that kind of an ego. I wouldn't say it's more confidence. I would say it's more of like an ego, just because he's gotten like all this praise. You wonder if he's just going to start thinking that he's the best if he's already pulling this crap in year 2. Whereas most young wide receivers, they're just looking to improve. They're looking to get better, work on the things that they're not good at because they're like young and inexperienced. And DK is already comparing himself to a top 3 wide receiver all time,
which we will get into later. But yeah, I 100% agree. I don't think it's normal, but I don't think it's good for him if he's thinking that way, because then your head's going to get too big. And then once he signs his extension, he's going to turn into an Antonio Brown. Now, I hope that doesn't happen, because I was right about him. Coming out of college, I thought he was going to be really good, despite him going in the late 2nd round. He was really the last pick in the 2nd round. I thought he should have been a 1st rounder, like top 15 or so, like where Jerry Jeudy went this year. I don't know what teams were in that area, you know, just looking back on it, but I definitely do think that he should have gone very high, and I was surprised. But then another letdown, and this is another big difference between him and Calvin Johnson, is that he just has the frame that's quote-unquote similar to Calvin Johnson, where, you know, he doesn't have the hands, he doesn't have the high pointing the ball ability, doesn't have the route running, doesn't have, you know, as much strength as him. It's like you're Walmart, right? You know, shout out to Jake Paul for that reference. You're Walmart, Calvin Johnson, if Calvin Johnson is Gucci, right? You know, you're there. A lot of people like you, but you're not it. You're not it. You have 7 drops and 9 drops in your past 2 years. 7 drops is more than both Terry McLaurin and AJ Brown have dropped combined in their entire career. And he's dropped 2 more passes in 4 less games. In 4 less games he's dropped this year alone, and he dropped 7 last year. So his hands are not as good as they should be. So that's another issue. So final ranking before we move on, I will also like to say that AJ Brown is very close to these 2 while missing 2 games. Yeah, 2 games and a bye. So while missing 2 games. Still very close. I think he would be much more in the debate because let's say he gets 100 yards a game, pops him up. I think he has the highest ceiling, A.J. Brown, because he's the most polished out of all of them, and he has that superstar, that extra factor that Terry McLaurin doesn't have, but Terry McLaurin is like the safest wide receiver. He's one of the best. Like, if I had to choose wide receiver number 2s, he's one of the best in football, if that makes sense. Like, there's different styles for wide receiver 1s. Wide receiver 1s, you want more of the big play. Wide receiver 2s, you kind of want that under route, that slant, typically crossing route, all that stuff, and then turn it into 10 yards instead of 5 yards. But number 1, I'm going to have to still go with DK currently at this moment. I do think, like I said, A.J. Brown will be the best at the end of his career. Right now, number 1, DK, just because first in yards, fifth in touchdowns, pretty much speaks for himself. Highest in average yards per catch. Then second, Terry McLaurin, because he's more polished. And A.J. Brown, keep in mind, has been doing all this while never getting 8 catches in a single game. So he is very much on track to be an extremely good wide receiver. But we shall move on now. Moving on to our second topic. This is the 2019 versus 2020 NFL draft classes for wide receivers. I know we're going to keep talking about wide receivers. Get over it. Which do you think's better, Gavin?
So I'm kind of torn.
Would you like me to say the players? I have all the good ones written down, by the way. If you would like to say them. I have all the good players, in my opinion, all the good wide receivers from each draft class written down. So if you would like me to say them, I'll say them later.
No, I know who the wide receivers are. I think in terms of talent and in terms of like the best wide receivers in the league right now, 2019 got DK, AJ, and Terry, who we just talked about. But I think the 2020 wide receiver class is a lot deeper because after you get through those big 3, 2019, the drop-off is pretty steep. But in 2020, you got Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Jalen Reagor could be good. So I think you have more guys that they won't be as talented as the 2019, but there's more like good guys that could that are like more widespread around the league. Does that make sense? Am I being confusing?
Nope.
So yeah, I think in terms of talent, the 2019 wide receiver class is better, but I think the drop off is very big, and so the 2020 wide receiver class they're a lot deeper.
Yes, I would 100% agree with that. I feel like DK, Terry, and AJ Brown will be better than every single wide receiver in the 2020 class, except for maybe Jefferson and Denzel Mims. Shout out Denzel Mims. But in 2019, you had DK, Terry, AJ Brown, Hollywood Brown, Travis Fulgham, Deebo Samuel, Paris Campbell, Deontay Johnson, and Darius Slayton. Shout out him. He went to Auburn. Very cool. I did not know that. Mr. Inconsistent on fantasy there. So those are all, in my opinion, the decent wide receivers.
He's Brown, but he's been bad this year. Deebo Samuel, he's okay. He's like more of like a running wide receiver.
Kind of like a discount Terry. Like he's similar to Terry in my opinion, but not.
Okay, so no, they use plays. They use Deebo Samuel on running plays a lot of the time.
Anyways, so next, so that's the 2019 wide receiver. So I think they're much more star-studded. And then you have the 2020. You have Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Lamb, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, LaQuavis Chenault. I hope I got that correct. Chase Claypool, Denzel Mims, Darnell Mooney, the Bears wide receiver, and Donovan Peoples-Jones.
I think pretty good. I think we can both agree that the 2019 class is going to produce more great receivers, and the 2020 class is going to produce more good receivers.
Yes. Yeah, I think all those guys are very good and have very high potential. I think the best one of them all right now is Jefferson, and then that will be the best by the end of the career. It's going to be close, but I think Claypool's going to kind of sneak up because I feel like Pittsburgh's going to draft a quarterback. Big Ben will take him under his wing, and then he'll retire after next year, and then bada bing, bada boom, you have another wide receiver quarterback pairing that's very good for many years over in Pittsburgh. This time, don't mess it up. Next, we have a suggestion by Matt Moore. Thank you, Matt Moore, for. Oh, wait, no. I'm sorry. I do apologize. We actually have our top 5 wide receivers in the NFL right now. Now, I'm going to list mine first because I think Gavin will crucify me for this. But I think I got to go with these guys as my top 5 right now. Number 1, Davante Adams, right? He doesn't have as many yards. I think he's like 5th or 6th in yards. He's 6th in yards, but he's only 100 behind Metcalf, who's in first, or 90 behind him. And then behind third, he's 50 yards behind Tyreek Hill. Yet he has 13 touchdowns. So insane production. He's been amazing this year, especially with the injuries / whatever the hell's going on with Michael Thomas to him and Julio Jones. That's helped him a lot. And then Hopkins has also been very, very good this year. He's right behind him, 7th in receiving yards, only 5 touchdowns. But I think he hasn't been targeted as much as he was at the beginning of the year. Like if you're looking at the top catches there, you have Adams with 84. He only has 85 for Hopkins, and then 90 for Stephon Diggs over there. So he's not that he's not getting the ball as much to be able to play make as much as he was earlier in the year. Number 4, the guy we were just talking about, DK Metcalf. And number 5, Justin Jefferson. Because Jefferson, surprising to me, has the 4th amount of yards and is tied for 7th in touchdowns. I did not know this on only 61 catches, which is the least until you get to DJ Moore, who's 9th in receiving yards and only has 4 touchdowns. So he's been extremely good. Unfortunately, because I didn't think he would be, but he's been very, very good. I think if we're including like the past few years, I think you're dropping obviously Metcalf and Jefferson, and you're moving Hill down to 5, and you're putting Julio at 1, Michael Thomas at 2, Hopkins at 3, Davante at 4, and Tyreek Hill at 5, if we're including the past few years. But right now in 2020, as it stands, in between week 13 and week 14 on Wednesday, December 9th, that's my top 5. Davante, Hopkins, Hill, Metcalf, and Jefferson. What about you, Gavin?
Wow, no Julio. I was very surprised.
Yeah, he's been way too injured for me to put him in the top for 2020. Just been way too injured this year, despite him being amazing still.
So, yeah, I actually did not really take that into account, really. So I still have Adams 1, D-Hop 2. You pretty much covered all the bases there. Adams and his connection with Aaron Rodgers, I mean, it's just been unbelievable to see what they've been able to do this year. Unfortunately, I'm a Bears fan, so it really sucks. But DeAndre Hopkins, him and Kyler Murray have formed another lethal duo. They've kind of cooled off a little bit. But still, he has a knack for the end zone, still has baseball gloves for hands. Number 3, I did have Julio just because I didn't really account for his injuries that much. So obviously his stats are not going to be good. And then him and Calvin Ridley have been battling for spots. But when Julio's been healthy, he's just still been classic Julio, just route running, just breaking corners' ankles and getting open, what Julio does best. He rarely makes mistakes. And so I think when he's healthy, when Matt Ryan's playing good, he's still a top 3 wide receiver. Number 4, I had Tyreek Hill. Even though with a slow start to the year, man, is he good. And, he's showcasing the best part of his game, which is his speed and his connection with Mahomes. You see the pattern here. Quarterbacks really making the wide receivers look good. And, Tyreek Hill, a lot of yards, a lot of touchdowns. So what else do you need from him? Wide receiver. And then number 5, I'm really torn between either Stephon Diggs or Justin Jefferson, because Jefferson on the stat sheet, Diggs is better than him in everything except for touchdowns. But the offense is
not yards, but yeah. I mean, he's only got him by 2 yards, but
receptions, yeah. But it's close in yards. But this Diggs' touchdowns, you see Josh Allen running it a lot of times. They have a large amount of weapons with Singletary, John Brown, Cole Beasley. So, I mean, it makes sense if Diggs isn't in the end zone a lot. But at the same time, Justin Jefferson you can consider him a number 2 wide receiver with Adam Thielen. He's made it a bunch of incredible plays this year as well. So I really can't pick.
I think
I had to go with my number 5. I think I would pick Stephon Diggs just because without his touchdowns, I think his improvement from last year to this year, being in the new system, and the improvement of Josh Allen, I think he's only going to get better. So I would have Stephon Diggs at number 5, but Justin Jefferson is right there.
Alrighty, I want to say, sorry, I'm going to keep interjecting, or not really interjecting, but going on side tangents. For Julio Jones, he's missed 3 games so far, and he's put up amazing numbers in those games. But the issue is that Calvin Ridley is now, for some reason, the red zone target, or their plethora of tight ends is now a red zone target. He has only gotten 3 touchdowns this year, so that does not help his case. But Julio, I think he's like wine. He's aged very well. He's aged extremely well. Now, he doesn't have the step he does anymore, but I think he really notices that, because I was watching the Carolina game, because that's really the only game that he's played that I've been able to watch against Carolina in primetime on Thursday night. He was routing up dudes all night. I feel like what he did is that he is now starting to rely less on his physical gifts and more on his route running and just amazing footwork, technique.
He hasn't really
been amazing.
He hasn't really been a red zone target, but he's like kind of creating his own touchdowns, whether it's like getting like ridiculous separation or yards after the catch. I don't think it was either the Denver game or it was the Carolina game where he caught it and it was like a short, or Matt Ryan was like scrambling. All of a sudden, Julio Jones turned up field and scored off of that play. So it's kind of like he's been making plays, which has led to his touchdowns. It's not like a standard, like what you see nowadays, red zone, like touchdowns, where it's just like one-on-one coverage, go up and get it. Julio Jones is like creating his own touchdowns in a sense.
100% agree. I think he's going to get better, and we're going to talk more about him later on the podcast. Right now, once again, another shout out, just quick, to Travis Kelce. This man is 2nd in receiving yards. He's tied for 6th with A.J. Brown in touchdowns with 8 touchdowns as a tight end. He is having a historic season. Amazing, and he's improved his blocking so much. He's been amazing this year. Now, we are finally going to move on. No, we're not. This was also a shout out to Jack Ginter. He also suggested this through Gavin, the top 5 wide receivers. So thank you for that. Now, moving on, we have one from Matt Moore. This is the one from Matt Moore. Basically, how good is Trubisky? Just debate Trubisky is what he said. So I was like, against 2021 free agents or whatnot, and he said both, I guess. So first, we're going to give our opinions on Trubisky, like what makes him good, what makes him bad, and then we're going to compare him against the 2021 free agents. I think a couple of these guys signed extensions, but we're still just going to talk about them. But Gavin, you go first. I've been hogging all the time.
So should I start with like the free agents?
No, start with what do you think of Trubisky? Like, what's your opinions on him? What makes him good, quote unquote, because I don't think there's anything, or what gives him potential, and then what kills him? What makes him bad?
Starting off with the right, there's not a lot, if I'm being honest. First of all, it was a reach to pick him at 2. Ryan Pace is the big dumb. So he shouldn't be like really held up to those number 2 overall expectations just because he's not a number 2 overall pick. Like, in a sense, he started 1 year in college and he wasn't even great then. I think he led North Carolina to like an 8-5 record. And really, I guess what he does well is he can scramble. Like he's pretty athletic. He can run well, which of course with him and Matt Nagy has forced him to keep him in the pocket out of all but one game in 2019 against the Cowboys, and they won that game and put up like a hefty number of points. And then in 2018, he wasn't like a pocket passer, and they won 12 games. Obviously, different now, but I feel like Nagy's tried to make Trubisky a pocket passer rather than like a natural like scrambler and throwing on the run, which he doesn't do that great, but he also can't stand in the pocket, can't take hits, can't like he feels the pressure too much, and I guess he hits wide open receivers, but the deep ball is very bad. He's accurate on like short and medium passes, but other than that, he's not really good. I'm going to be honest with you. He's just not like a good quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I think he's trash in every sense of the word. But I'm going to start with the bad and end on a good note for him before we move into why we should move on from him, to give him a little bit of confidence. Because once again, I know every sports player in the world watches his podcast. So with the bad, he can't read a defense whatsoever. Now, the play calling is not helping him whatsoever.
His decision-making is brutal.
What did you say? His decision-making?
His decision-making and defense reading is not good, which, I mean, he started 1 year in college, so...
Yeah, you'd expect that from someone who's only started for a year in college because he isn't that experienced. Mm-hmm. So, continuing with that is that his decision-making is really, really bad. And then, as I said, reading a defense, he just physically cannot read a defense. It's insane and how someone could not read a defense so hard. If you ever watched him really closely, you can see is he stares down his wide receivers every time. He cannot flip his eyes. I've never seen him complete a pass that has gotten a first down or gotten something noteworthy, like more than 3 yards or a check down. Like him actually completing a pass that isn't a check down where he flips his eyes, flips it over the center of the field. So he checks one read. He's like, okay, that didn't work. Moves to second read that's typically on the same side to make it, just check that one because you typically check the deep one and then you move to a more intermediate or shallow one, depending on the play call, of course. You check that one, and then you flip your eyes to the guy who's on the other side of the field, whether that's a tight end or a wide receiver. I've never seen him do that and complete a pass that's been downfield that's not a check down, as I said. So that's probably the worst part of his game at all, like of it all. That's by far the worst because then the guy who's you're trying to, throw against is most likely playing zone because, it's easier to go up against a quarterback who can't read a defense against zone because they can't read when it's zone and they can't tell where the soft spots in the zones are. And for zones, you have to make a lot of reads. So he can't do that. So they just run zone and the guy's staring him down and looking Trubisky, and as Trubisky's staring down the wide receiver he's going to throw to, then he throws an interception. And no surprise, the guy knew it was coming. You were looking at it the whole way. It's baffling at how bad he is. And then his mechanics are consistent. So he misses easy throws. His, as we said, decision making. And then it's not being helped by the play calling because to help with the play calling, you have to have a ton of movement so we can tell if it's man or zone. So then if it's zone, just immediately dump it off to the running back in the flat or the tight end on the crossing route or Darnell Mooney on a slant route. Don't even look at Allen Robinson or Anthony Miller running the first read. Don't even look at them if it's zone because he can't read zone. So, or get very clear zone beaters. Like there's very clear plays that beat zone that they aren't running. So that hurts him a lot as well. Now for the good. His arm strength's iffy, but it's enough to, be very productive at the NFL for...
He can't hit the deep ball, though, so he doesn't really throw it.
I said I'm talking about the positives, Gavin. We're trying to be positive here. Positive.
There's nothing positive with Trubisky.
I know. I don't believe there is one, and that'll also play into our next debate. He has obviously scrambling potential, very athletic for a quarterback. So great scrambling potential, but that's it, really. Like, there's nothing else really good besides his scrambling potential and his okay arm. It's really nothing else. I mean, he can be accurate at sometimes. Like they killed his mechanics here trying to fix it. So, moving on to the 2021.
Trubisky. Quick
What?
one for Trubisky.
Yeah.
I heard on the radio that since 2018, Trubisky's, I want to say it's almost half of his touchdowns since 2018 have come from when the Bears were down 14 points or more.
Of course.
2 touchdowns or more in the fourth or third quarter since 2018, which is just insane. I mean, it's mostly just stats padding. So, like, his numbers really look his numbers are worse than they look, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that brings up to another big issue is pressure. He can't handle it, whether it's IRL pressure where it's like actually guys pressuring him, the defense, or it's the pressure of what he has to do. But the 2021 free agents right now, besides I'm 99% sure none of them have an extension except for one, which I'm pretty sure he does. That is Dak Prescott, who does not, Cam Newton, Andy Dalton, Jacoby Brissett, which I think actually may have signed one last year, but I'm not for sure on that one. Fitzmagic, Taysom Hill, who I'm pretty sure as well, but I'm not for sure, and Tyrod Taylor. Who do you like? Who do you not like? And obviously Trubisky is also one, and we're probably going to trade Foles because why the hell would we pay him $26 million over the next?
Did you put Phillip Rivers in that news?
I thought he was on a 2-year, 25 per. Is he a 1 year?
I think it's 1 year, yeah.
Okay, then Phillip Rivers, but I wouldn't want him over any of the guys I mentioned.
Yeah, I think best case for them is going to the draft, if I'm being honest, because right now, assuming that we keep losing, you should end up with like maybe the 13th pick, maybe even lucky if we finish like 5-11, which would just be amazing. I know we mostly covered the Bears last time, but I don't really like any of those free agent names except for maybe like Jacoby Brissett, and even that's a stretch just because like when he was with the Colts, he wasn't like awful, and he was like I think third, like the backup to Jimmy G when he was on the Patriots. So it went like Tom Brady, Jimmy G, and then Jacoby Brissett. So I feel like that maybe being under like a good leader and a great quarterback like him. Maybe, but other than that, I would say no, because Fitzmagic is temporary. Phillip Rivers is about to retire. Dak will definitely not sign here. Tyrod Taylor, no. So, yeah, just go to the draft.
Wow. Okay, I do agree with you. I do think we should go to the draft, but I do think we should sign a short-term deal with one of these guys to be kind of like a play now and develop the quarterback so we don't have to worry about the quarterback position for the next 10 to 15 years. I don't want to throw him into the fire and kill him. Dak, obviously the best one there by a long shot. I think this year what the Cowboys have proven is that Dak is actually a top 5 quarterback or top 10, depending on what you think, which is surprising to most people. I thought he was like 8 or 9. I didn't think he was, top 5, but I think he's shown this year by how much the offense have regressed without him. Granted, they lost a lot of offensive linemen and Zeke decided to put on Butterfingers, but anyways, really, really good. Cam Newton, I mean, I love him because he went to Auburn and I would love that, but at the same time, he's regressed so much, and I think COVID has had a huge effect on him because he's just not looked the same. I think if we could have pre-COVID Patriots Cam, 100% down. Best, most viable option. Dalton, led along a lot of good teams a while ago, but decent teams. Brissett, not also a big fan. He's been benched to Phillip Rivers, basically, and now Phillip Rivers is being benched for Brissett. Weird situation over there at the quarterback. And then these last 3 guys, I actually really like all of them. Fitzmagic, because I feel like that would be fun, despite how frustrating it would be. I feel like it would be having Jay Cutler back on this team. Reminds me a lot of Jay Cutler. And then Taysom Hill, who I'm pretty sure signed an extension, but if he did not, he'd be very good because I feel like he's underrated as a passer. Now, I don't think he's great by any means, but I think he's passable. Pun included, or intended. Sorry, can't speak English. I think he's an underrated passer because they don't really give him a chance. Sean Payton doesn't really give him a chance. They call so many runs, quarterback powers, RPOs, and that kind of stuff. And with Alvin Kamara, all those RPOs are being bid on by the defensive end, so then he's just like, oh, sweet, 15 yards of free room. I'll take that over trying to pass and possibly throw an interception. And then my favorite of the group here, who I think is the safest and has the highest floor and not really the highest ceiling, but a pretty high ceiling, would be Tyrod Taylor. Because last time he was able to start and do a whole season starting, he led a Bills team to the playoffs for the first time in like 17, 18 years it was, maybe 19, around there. And I think
2017.
That was 2017, the same year the Jags were good. Because
I thought it was they lost to the Jags. They were like the 6th seed that year.
Yeah, they were the 6th seed. They just snuck in because I think it was Baltimore or Cincinnati that choked. I think it was Cincinnati that beat Baltimore, so Baltimore didn't get in the playoffs. But whatever. I still feel like Tyrod Taylor still got it because he'd still have a job if a guy didn't puncture his lung trying to give him, health treatments and whatever. So I feel like he would be very good for this team. And you have Tyrod Taylor there, and then you kind of develop him. I feel like Taysom Hill. If they did get Taysom Hill, I feel like that's kind of more of a more lateral move than any of these other quarterbacks. I feel like why would you get Hill and then draft a quarterback? Because Hill's young enough and inexperienced enough that you'd have to still develop him. And then you'd have to develop 2 quarterbacks after you already messed up developing another quarterback, despite the fact that neither of the guys in the regime right now, Nagy or Pace, should still have a job and develop our next quarterback. But I think that's enough talking on that. Thank you for the suggestion, Matt Moore. Now to continue with the Trubisky theme, and if you guys are still listening, because I know most of you aren't, looking at your watch time metrics, get that up. Like the last one was like 3 minutes. Come on, guys. What are we doing here? What are we doing? This is a podcast. Come on. Very disappointed again. I'm annoying Gavin with how much I'm talking because he wants to keep this under time, but I actually like to talk about it a lot, and I'm cool with the timing because you guys don't watch all the way, so it doesn't matter anyways. So we can talk as much as we want, Gavin, as much as you cringe and flip me off. I hope your grandma sees that. If she watches this part, because apparently none of you watch this part. But if you are, thank you, Connor Dorner, for the suggestion, and thank you, Matt Veza, for shouting out our podcast in football. Sophomores now. Yeah, we're sophomores. Group chat. If you guys are still listening, shout out to you guys. I don't think like all of you who are listening.
Can we get on to the thing?
No. I don't think you guys understand at how much we appreciate this. It's so supportive and we love it so much. We are so thankful. At least I am, because Gavin doesn't think so, or I don't think Gavin thinks so, because he keeps trying to.
Whoa! Hey! Of course, I'm thankful.
Yes, we are. Thank you guys so much. We do appreciate a ton. Now to move on, I'm gonna let Gavin take this one, but this is basically: is it Trubisky holding down the team, or is it the rest of the team holding down Trubisky? And this is apparently a big debate when they are doing the workouts, because I don't know anything about that. I don't know about working out. What's that? So please inquire us, Gavin.
Is it Trubisky or the Bears? I would have to go with Mitch Trubisky.
What a great fake out there.
Where do I even start? I mean, we just went over Trubisky's analysis and we were struggling to find positives, so that should tell you the answer right there. Yeah, I don't really think there's much of a question. Have there been other parts of the Bears that have not been good? Yes. The offensive line is the worst in the league. The defense, as Tony Dungy says, has just straight up given up, especially Buster Screen. But overall, the play the
Buster trash can.
But yeah, we know that the problems have stemmed from the quarterback's position, except in 2018, Cody Parkey. But I mean, Trubisky was never really the long-term answer. Nick Foles has struggled. The Bears are so bad. We need to find another option. Draft a quarterback, draft O-line, huh?
So, or sign them. Shout out, more shout-outs to the kids in said workout group or working out right now, listening to it if you are. And you think that it's the rest of the Bears team that is bringing down Trubisky and the Bears rather than Trubisky bringing them down. You think you play football. You think you watch football, but you're actually blind. What are you thinking? How do you call yourself a football player and fan? Come fight me if you disagree. That this talented of a roster is bringing down Mitch Trubisky. The man's one positive that, he has decent legs. Yeah, they're okay. They're okay. Maybe top 10. He's top 10 in something, and it's with his legs. It's not even with the arm. And you know what a quarterback needs? To throw the damn ball. And you know what you need that? An arm. This isn't soccer. And this roster is so talented. Allen Robinson, in my opinion, I was trying to be more objective with the top 5 wide receivers. I put him number 1 because I'm very biased whenever I actually give my opinion, but I'm trying to be unbiased here because podcast, professionalism. But I have him near the top. He's very good. He has 71 catches with no drops. He's extremely, extremely talented. And then, Anthony Miller is not very good now, apparently, but Darnell Mooney is routing up Jalen Ramsey, and he can't even hit him. It's insane at how talented. David Montgomery is a decent running back. He's great at breaking tackles, but imagine if we had a good offensive line. I feel like David Montgomery would be a top 10, near top 5 running back, 7th or 5th or 6th. So it's insane to me that anyone would think that Trubisky is not the one holding back this team. I mean, I feel like Matt Nagy and his play calling is also hurting it, but the quarterback position is numero uno. That's the biggest issue on this team. So we have come to the end of another topic. And this is, I am pretty sure, I am double checking my notes right now, our last football topic. And then we get into a general sports and then a couple hockey topics if you're still listening. So the next one we have is, where does Julio Jones stack up in all-time wide receivers for you? You shall go first, Gavin, because I still have to pull up the stats because I'm unprepared, man.
I think not top 5, but I think he's right outside the top 5 at number 6. So the guys I have ahead of him would be Alvin Johnson, Randy Moss, Jerry Rice number 1, obviously. So Jerry Rice, Terrell Owens, Larry Fitzgerald. You know what? I'm forgetting this. Let me.
Marvin Harrison?
Let's just redo this. Hold on.
Torrey Holt?
I'm forgetting. No. I'm forgetting who the guys that I had ahead of them. So, T.O., Rice, Fitz, and Megatron. Okay.
Are we cutting this or are we keeping this in?
Yeah, no, we're cutting this.
Okay.
So, let's do 3, 2, 1. So, where do I have Julio? Not top 5, but 6. So right outside the top 5. The guys I have ahead of him: Randy Moss, Terrell Owens, Jerry Rice, number 1, obviously. Then Larry Fitzgerald and Megatron, Calvin Johnson, a.k.a. DK Metcalf, apparently. So enough DK Metcalf slander. No, I think Julio is 6 just because his stats have been incredible and he's never really had a Hall of Fame quarterback. I don't think Matt Ryan's going to be in the Hall of Fame unless they somehow put him in the Hall of Fame. But, Randy Moss has had Dante Culpepper, I think his name was, and Tom Brady. Jerry Rice has Joe Montana. Even Larry Fitzgerald, he was kind of the guy that it was between him and Julio, really, that I was kind of balancing in between 5th and 6th. And Fitzgerald hasn't really had a great quarterback except for Kurt Warner. But I think where Julio gets knocked is in terms of greatness. He has not won a championship. He should have a championship if Dan Quinn and Kyle Shanahan weren't the people that they were. But he does not have a championship. I mean, numerous individual achievements, but I think the lack of having a Super Bowl victory will hurt him. So I have those 5 guys ahead of him, and then Julio.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I would like to say this before I say where I have Julio. I don't think that championships should be factored into any other position except for quarterback, because you typically can't decide if your team's going to win a championship
that makes sense.
The majority of the time, right? Wide receivers, you have to get thrown the ball too. Who do you have to have that thrown by? That depends. That's a big difference between teams. So Jerry Rice is still number 1 by a mile, but I don't think it's as far as people think because he had Joe Montana, a top 5 quarterback all time, throwing him to for his entire career up until the end, where he basically was nothing. He was just kind of racking on like 400 yards a year for his last 4 years of his career, from like 2000 to 04, 2000 to 2004. I have, this is a bit controversial, Julio Jones, 4th. The 4th greatest wide receiver to ever play football.
Okay, who's behind?
Number 1, Jerry Jones. Jerry Rice. Jerry Jones. I know you're listening to this. Screw you. Sue me like you need more money. Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, Calvin Johnson, and then Julio Jones. I'm kind of a sucker for the big, fast wide receiver. So Randy Moss, of course, 4th in receiving yards. He's only like 600 or so behind Terrell Owens, and Terrell Owens played. They played the same amount of years, actually, but I feel like Terrell Owens, very good. I'm kind of killing myself with mentioning him. I just have receiving yards up. I probably should have touchdowns up. I don't really have the time for that right now. But Terrell Owens, I could see the argument for putting up 4 and Julio at 5, but at the pace that Julio is on now, I don't see it.
You also have to see that. How old is Julio? I'm not the biggest Julio fan. So
Julio is, I want to say, I don't know. I think he's like 29. I just know he's played 9 years in the league. This is his 9th year in the league. So he already has nearly 1,300 receiving yards.
He's 31.
I was going to guess
31, and he's played like 100 less games than the majority of these guys, but still has like almost the same numbers as them. So I think that's incredible. And but I think we also don't know like where the rest of his career could go. Like he could have like a devastating injury that would.
Hey, whoa! Don't bring that upon him. Now, if he gets,
he could join. He could join like the Seahawks or the I don't know, that he could join the Chiefs and get a ton of touchdowns and win 3 championships, and then arguably be the best receiver in history. But yeah, right now I think he's 6th.
So I think he's 4th or 5th. I want to keep explaining my points, Gavin, because I totally never interrupted.
I thought you were done.
No. So Julio Jones has played 9 years. He has nearly 13,000 receiving yards. He's only played 9 years. The only guy with under 12 years and is inside the top 20, because Julio Jones right now is 20th in receiving yards, is, who was it? It was Torrey Holt, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Torrey Holt, and he played 10 years. And so that means in the next year, Julio Jones basically has to have just under 1,000 receiving yards, because he's under like 900 or so, 990, 980 yards behind Torrey Holt for 16th. And I feel like he'll be passing a ton of guys in the next few years because he's kind of in a clump, right? He has a clump. He's at the top of the clump of the 12,000 guys, and then there's a clump of 13,000 receiving yards, and there's a clump of 14,000, and there's a couple that are low, like Andre Johnson. He only played for 13 years, and he has 14,100, and Chris Carter, and then James Lofton, who I've never heard of, has 14,004. So I feel like in the next year, he can pass all of those guys and get into 11th in the next year. And then another year, if he gets near 1,000 yards, he'll go into 6th, where Tony Gonzalez is, in receiving yards alone. And he, to me, it's like, for me, it's more, who would I want on my team, right? Because Larry Fitz and Terrell Owens are extremely amazing. But they're not similar, but they're both similar in the fact that they're like Terry McLaurin, where they have no standout factor, right? There's no standout factor with any of them. Larry Fitz is his hands.
Yeah,
every great wide receiver has great hands,
which is just unreal for me.
There's not one wide receiver in the top 20 that has bad hands per se. All of them have great hands. So it's not anything super special for him, at least to me. I think that's one of the most insane stats in the world that you said, Gavin, where he has more tackles than drops. Insane. But, doesn't have that superstar thing to me. And then, you know, like I said with Terrell Owens, and obviously I feel like Randy Moss, Calvin Johnson, and Jerry Rice are the top three for obvious reasons. You know, Calvin Johnson just isn't on the height of the stacked list because he right now is 31st with 11,619 yards, but he only played for 7 years. So that was in 7 years. He was at 11,600. So if he would have continued, he obviously would have ended with the most yards of all time, in my opinion, you know. But I feel like there's an argument for Larry Fitz or Terrell Owens, but I feel like he's in with them. So he's either fourth or sixth. I feel like it more depends on how much you like him at where he is. Like Gavin, you're not the biggest fan of him, so you have him at six. I'm not saying you dislike him, but you don't like him as much as I do. And then I like him a lot, so I put him fourth, as well as I think he has that superstar thing, which is everything. Like, I know that doesn't make sense, that kind of contradicts at what I said, but there's not a single issue with him. Not a single one. Larry Fitz, it's speed. Terrell Owens, locker room. Like, I mean, as much as I don't want to knock it against him, as a football player, you have to fit in with everybody. But that's obviously what I heard from the media. And if you look at Terrell Owens in his recent interviews, he's always been like, you know, I just got a bad rap for the media and whatnot. It's like, okay, let's take that out of the equation. Let's take it out of the equation now. Sure, put him fourth, put Julio fifth. I'm cool with it. But, you know, I think I just got to put Julio ahead of him, mainly because recency bias. And, yeah, that's kind of it. Alrighty, moving on to the next question we have is hard cap, soft cap, or no cap? And that's a game show we have is how hard are you lying? Haha, jokes, everybody. Thank you.
Or how hard are your hats?
Gavin is cringing at me just like most of you are. If you're still watching, get the watch time up. No, it is with a certain style of the league rules of how money is quote unquote distributed, or what is the limit or the cap for amount of money that a team can spend.
It's the salary cap rules.
Salary cap. Yeah. Make it simple. I don't have to over explain stuff. So you have three options: hard cap, soft cap, and no cap. No cap is basically baseball. No one cares. The league isn't dividing up money at all. The league's just like, fend for yourselves. And then you have a roster where of the Tampa Bay Rays, where the entire roster is making $39 million. And then you have the against the Dodgers, where any two players on their team is probably combined making $39 million a year. If you combine them with Clayton Kershaw and Mookie Betts, any other player with one of those two is making $39 million in total. So, yeah. Next we have
Kershaw and Betts combined is $39 million.
It's way over because it's 26 and 26, so that'd be 52.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, so then you have the NBA, which is soft cap, where basically they're like luxury tax, luxury tax, luxury tax, luxury tax. Okay, and then you reach your limit. So it's like most teams have to pay so much in luxury tax, and most owners don't have that much money or care that much about the team, or like care much more about profits, that they don't go over a certain number of luxury tax, except for the 2016 through 2018 Warriors. No team has really ever reached that hard cap, I think. I don't know if that's a fact, but basically they try and slow you down from actually getting to that edge roll.
There is like a cap, correct? There is like a real cap. It's just like no team's ever going to really reach it. It's like
exactly, except for the Warriors when they did. They were, I'm pretty sure, the only team. I don't know exactly how the luxury tax works, but basically, if you reach a certain amount, the league's like, hey, you're spending way too much on your team. Can you not? And they also take money from the owner. And then you have hard cap, which is simple, easy, awesome. That's a slogan for a company I don't remember. But what the NFL uses, basically, stop here. You can't spend a dime more. Simple enough. Gavin, what's your favorite model?
So this is going to be a bit traditional. I think no cap is just dumb. Like the whole thing with the MLB in terms of like their signing players, it's just kind of it doesn't make sense to me. I don't think it's effective at all. But, you know, there's the MLB for you. Then there's soft cap, which I think you're a soft cap guy if I'm not wrong, but you'll explain later. I think it's okay, but let me just say I like hard cap the best. And the reason that I don't like soft cap is just because you kind of it allows like certain teams to get like a lot it creates an imbalance between like the big markets and the small markets. So it's like the Knicks and the Lakers and the Bucks and the Pelicans, we'll say. So especially now with the league and how like agents are playing like a bigger factor. Like Rich Paul, he's like the head guy at Clutch Sports who manages like LeBron, Anthony Davis, Ben Simmons, like a lot of the good guys in the league, and how he was kind of the reason how the Lakers were able to get their LeBron and AD tandem, just because they were in Los Angeles and Rich Paul kind of like started the whole thing. So he got LeBron there, he got AD there, and then that's kind of why their extensions were there at the same time. So for me, I just think the soft cap is a little bit annoying because there's no like limit. It just kind of creates that balance with the Knicks and the Lakers, which is the Lakers already have that free agency type swing with like everybody wants to be in Los Angeles. Everybody has a house in Los Angeles. Los Angeles has the best weather. In free agency, everybody wants to go to the Lakers or the Clippers now, apparently. So then them having the ability to spend like not as much money as they want, but like they're allowed to go over the salary cap is just kind of contributes to that imbalance. So I think hard cap is the best option for the NFL because you don't really see that ridiculous like teams signing like a ridiculous amount of free agents in the offseason like you would in the MLB and the NBA. There's no like super team forming unless it's like good drafting and such. Does that make sense?
Yes. I would have to disagree. I think we both agree that no cap is trash. Like I gave the example where it's two Mookie Betts and Clayton Kershaw because they both make the same money, plus any other player on the roster, active playoff roster for the Dodgers, would be as much as every player on the entire roster of the Tampa Bay Rays.
No,
so that's insane. More than, right? Yeah, more than. So it's crazy. That's so dumb. But I think the NBA has it right and wrong. I think they have it right with the soft cap situation, but I think they got to lower the cap a bit more, like the actual end a bit more, and raise the luxury taxes. So then teams can be a bit more competitive. Because the reason why I like it, I get your point. I understand it. I actually agree with it where it kind of screws over small market teams. But at the same time, I like it to where it's easier to keep the players you drafted, I feel like, and it's easier to create a dynasty even if you're not the greatest drafters, right? It's easier to create a dynasty than it is in the NFL. For the NFL, it's basically impossible to create a dynasty. There's only been, I would say, 2, 3 dynasties since the Super Bowl era, right? The Patriots is a dynasty. I'd argue that not the 90s or the 80s 49ers, because I'm pretty sure they won like 4 Super Bowls, all 4 of theirs in the 80s. So I'd include them, and then the 70s Steelers. And then I'd say the early Packers. So that's 4 dynasties where I'd say in the past 30 years, there's been 3 dynasties in the NBA. In comparison to the past 55 for the NFL, there's only been 4. Because you have the Bulls of the 90s, right? Then you have you can argue the Lakers, I guess, so that would make it 4, and the Spurs, and then the Warriors. So there's 4 in the past 30 years that won their last championship 22 years ago. So I like that you can keep a dynasty going a bit more, but I do hate that they do kind of screw over the small market team. So for me, it's soft cap.
I feel like in terms of like creating a dynasty, I feel like creating a dynasty shouldn't be as easy as having the nicest weather, and you can create a dynasty. You see,
I guess. Yeah, that makes sense.
Everybody wants to go to Los Angeles. Everybody wants to go to New York. Everybody wants to go to Miami.
Nobody wants to go to New York.
Brooklyn.
Yeah, but I mean like the Knicks.
That's
just sad. you're sad if you're a Knicks fan. You're questioning
There
their
were rumors about it. It wasn't. They were like no.
Yeah, but that's because that's the Knicks, and then rumors get the
Yes,
most clicks. And fuck you,
yes,
you fan.
connected to everything. But I mean, you don't hear like, oh, LeBron's considering between Milwaukee or Memphis. Like, I mean, you just don't hear that. It's always just the big name cities.
Yeah, that's fair. And where Tom Brady was choosing between Tennessee and Tampa Bay, you know? So I guess that makes sense. I guess I'll switch my opinion to hard cap. That's a very quick switch, Josh. Yes, it is. So we have our first hockey question. Who is the greatest American-born hockey player of all time? I think Gavin and I both narrowed it down to 2. I feel like there's a third one maybe, but it's much harder to judge, and that's Chris Chelios, the defenseman. But I think we got it between the centerman, Mike Modano, or Modano, however you want to pronounce it, and Patrick Kane. So the original question is Patrick Kane the greatest American-born NHL player of all time? But then, since we saw it really just came down to 2 between Mike Modano and Patrick Kane, you know, I feel like that is what it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the greatest between the 2 of them? You shall go first, Captain.
It's just been really, really tough because it's like you can see an argument for both of them, which is what makes it really, really tough. I would like if someone told me it was Patrick Kane, I wouldn't argue with them. But I think I'm going to have to go with Mike Modano. But in terms of a greatness standpoint, I think Patrick Kane, it's hard to argue that. He's been so clutch in the playoffs, and he's won 3 cups. But Mike Modano, from a stats standpoint, he has won that cup off of that controversial no goal game with I think it was one of the Hulls
against Buffalo, and that was Brett Hull, Bobby's son.
Brett Hull. Okay, I was going to say Bobby, but I knew that was wrong. But yeah,
he's that's why we don't talk too much about
an American goal scorer, points leader, and assists. But he has played a lot more games than Patrick Kane. So I mean, it's really hard, but I still think it's Modano just because this Blackhawks team has been a dynasty, and this Dallas Stars team, it wasn't as talented as it wasn't as talented as the Blackhawks championships teams. I would argue that the 2013 Blackhawks was the best team of the decade, if not the best team since the 2000. So not the best team ever, but definitely the best Blackhawks team of all time. So I mean, I'm going to have to go with Mike Modano.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it. I get it, but I disagree. I don't think it's him, and I don't think it's as close as I let on in the beginning to make it more neutral. I don't think it's that close because as a captain, the majority of his career, I think, and as a centerman, plus minus matters, not a ton, but quite a bit. And his plus minus over the years was pretty trash. I mean, his best season was 43, which is good, but there's a lot of negatives here. And his highest points in the season was 1992-93 and 1993-94, with his last year in Minnesota and his first year in Dallas when he scored 93 points both seasons. So he's never passed 95 or 100 points, which, I mean, 90 points probably back then is 100 points now because of the scoring differences, because he was in the 90s, right, when the Detroit came about, and Detroit really slowed their kind of hockey, and obviously every league is a copycat league, so their kind of hockey kind of slowed it down a bit and created way less scoring. So it's hard to not give it to him there, but and as well as he was always known as I was reading some articles on him back in the day, how they have some articles back from actual the time of it was happening. And it was, all of them were just kind of he's a good player. He's a top 10 player. And he was just kind of a top 10 player for 21 seasons. And that's how he racked up so many points, so many goals, so many assists. And, he was nothing awe-inspiring. He wasn't the best at anything in the league, kind of like what Larry Fitz, to make a comparison, just top 10, top 15 every year for a long time, and that's how he got it. Now, that's not a knock on him. That's just in this comparison a knock on him, not on him all time. He's very, very great. But at the same time, he was probably a better defender. Now, do I have any stats to back that up with? No. Why? Because hockey defensive stats don't make sense. Like analytic stats, they just don't make sense. For me, it's kind of who's a good defender? Word of mouth. Really, for what I just like look and research, and I have diehards who really know the analytics, and then they just are like, yeah, Jacob Slavin, the best defensive defenseman in the league. And I'm like, okay, because I don't really know the analytics. They don't make sense to me. But I'm gonna assume as a 6'3" centerman for 21 seasons, I'm gonna assume he's a much better defender than 5'9" or whatever, 5'11" Patrick Kane on the wing, who honestly, when you ever watch him, he's not very good at defense. So, he was not very awe-inspiring. Who I think it is, Patrick Kane. Now, Patrick Kane is utterly amazing. Now, his plus minuses aren't as great, but as a winger, it's not as up to him, if that makes sense. Like, as a winger, in my opinion, they don't affect it more because as a winger, you score more. Obviously, most guys are going to assist more than score, but it's much closer ratio for wingers. So I feel like the plus minus doesn't really affect him that much, even though nowhere near as good on the plus minus end. This is actually making me realize, because I feel like I'm now dumb mentioning the plus minus, because looking at Mike Modeno's plus minus in comparison to Patrick Kane's, it's like night and day. But I made a mistake, but I still think it's Kane because of the main reason is that even though they're both offensive players, that's the thing. They're both offensive players. And Patrick Kane versus Mike Modeno. Mike Modeno has had 8 more seasons under his belt, 21 in comparison to 13, 352 more points. That's an average of 44 points a season. Patrick Kane has never had a season below 44 points. His lowest amount of points in his career in a single season was in 2013 when he scored 55 in 47 games. His other worst in a near full season, so we're going to say 60 plus, is 69 in the year after in 2014 when he only played 61 games. Right? No, 64. Sorry, reading the wrong season. 64 points in 61 games. So let's say he plays 70, 80 games, bada bing, bada boom, he's back up to 80 on the point percentage-wise. So he's just been a prolific scorer his entire career, and he's been known to have the best hands in the NHL for a long time and one of the best shots. So he's for sure going to catch Mike Modeno because Patrick Kane isn't really slowing down. He's slowing down a little bit. But in 2018-19, he had his most points ever in one less game. He played 81 games and he had 110 points, which is most ever. He won the Hart Trophy back in 2016 when he had 106 points. So, yes, it's close, but that's still, he's not done. And in a shortened 70-game season, he had 84 points, and that's on track to get at least around 110 points as well. So he's not slowing down anytime soon. So you can mark that off. But he's very, very good. So extremely good. And I just got to put him above there because I feel like he'll catch Mike Modeno in all counting stats. He'll catch him. So I don't think Mike Modeno has a big enough lead, and I feel like Patrick Kane's more prolific. Am I probably biased on this? And have I probably not seen enough of Mike Modeno actually play hockey rather than just looking at spreadsheets or articles? Yes. Does that make a difference in my opinion? No.
I will say this. I feel like Patrick Kane is a lot more flashier than Mike Modeno, which I feel like is why he gets like a lot more like the attention that maybe he deserves. Mike Modeno was just a leader on and off the ice. He was the captain for many years in Dallas. Patrick Kane was never really known for like a leader, just more so for like his flashy plays and ability to have highlight plays that makes the audience just go, wow, that guy's great. Mike Modeno, he was really the guy to he was a winner. He was he never always had the best numbers, but he